Emily goes to the parking lot for a car. She buckles up and drives her car into a concrete wall in an apparent suicide attempt. Meanwhile, at a local hospital, Jonathan Banks is trying to calm down a police officer who's roughly manhandling a patient. The desk nurse tells Banks to see Emily Taylor with minor head trauma. Banks is her assigned psychiatrist. Emily looks in focus when she's questioned by Banks. Banks then put her on an antidepressant medication. He fears for her safety but agrees to her release from the hospital as long as she attends sessions with him regularly on Martin's charge. Emily goes back to work. Her boss notices her throwing up and says the pills she's taking used to throw her up as well, and mentions another medication, Celexa, which worked better for her. Emily tries a series of antidepressants, but none of them work for her. Jonathan contacts Emily's previous psychiatrist in Connecticut, Dr. Victoria Siebert, who suggests that Jonathan put Emily on a new drug called Blixa. Victoria says that Emily felt invisible towards her father and that she felt abandoned again when Martin went to jail. So it's better that she sees a male psychologist this time. Victoria says that the new drugs have a kind of placebo effect in some patients, so she's trying the new med on another one of her patients. Victoria also mentions a miscarriage, which Emily hadn't mentioned to Jonathan, who's reluctant to put Emily on the experimental drug. Meanwhile, Emily and Martin go to a music concert. When Emily goes to pick up the drinks from the bartender, she looks at herself in a distorted mirror and feels that she can't go on. Kayla mentions she's also on medication. Kayla goes to fetch Martin, but Emily has to leave the room. Martin hugs her on the terraced balcony and takes her away. We can see the happy face of a model advertising a Blixa. Emily is on the platform of an underground railway station. She looks towards a cop and prepares to jump from the platform, but the cop prevents her from jumping. Later, Jonathan is recommending his wife an anxiety drug so she'll feel less nervous when she attends the job interview. She's in direct competition with two other highly qualified candidates. Emily appears and interrupts Jonathan and Deirdre's conversation. As she has attempted suicide a second time by trying to jump onto the underground track, Jonathan puts her on the Blixa. The medication works, enabling Emily to function normally except for occasional sleepwalking episodes, a side effect of the drug. Later, Banks and his two business partners are having lunch with the drug representatives, praising a new medicine called Dilatrax and needs Banks to start trialing it with his patients. Emily is happy again. Martin notices the change in Emily and comments that whoever invented that pill is going to become rich. However, one night, Emily gets up in the middle of the night, prepares lunch, and sets the music volume high. Martin wants to stop the medication, but Emily doesn't want to change it. Soon after, Martin goes to visit Helmet in prison and plans to open an office in Houston. Another patient of Banks agrees to start the medication because she doesn't need to pay a cent for it. Emily arrives late to work and cannot explain why she's late. Her boss tells her to go home for the day, but that it can't happen again. Back home, Emily takes a pill. Martin comes home after talking to Helmet, and it looks like the business will succeed. Emily is preparing a glorious romantic dinner, and she stabs Martin to death while seemingly sleepwalking. The next day, NYPD detective questions her, and she says that she went to sleep and then woke up to see him dead. Jonathan has to go to the police station as Emily won't stop saying his name. Emily was setting the table for three, but Jonathan wasn't expected there. Jonathan brings out the sleepwalking side effect, but the detective and the assistant district attorney look at each other in disbelief. The aide tells him that somebody will be punished, Emily or Jonathan. Either Emily is a murderer or Jonathan mistreated her. Emily is brought to trial by Clyde, and Jonathan fights for acquittal. Criticized publicly for fumbling Emily's case, Emily is pushed to take some sleep pills by the prison's doctor, but she says that she doesn't want to see another pill in her life again. Emily's lawyer produces cases in which the accused was acquitted because of the sleepwalking idea. Banks is in dire straits and he admits to that. Banks can't sleep now because of Emily's case. Emily writes a letter and Martin's mother reads it on a TV program. The TV anchor tries to understand why she's helping her daughter-in-law. Nobody from the Blixa factory wants to comment, but Dr. Peter Jobert says there are reasons for the compulsory inclusion of a black box in the antidepressant box. Reporters pester the three Banks household members. Banks' patients start acting weird because of the case. Banks' colleagues assume he has been negligent due to his heavy workload. Jeffrey Childs interrogates Jonathan Banks. Jonathan claims that his wife lost his job. and all the bills he had to pay pushed him to do multiple shifts. Emily eventually agrees to plead insanity. She's declared not guilty in the condition that she stay in a mental institution until cleared by a psychiatrist. Due to the case's bad publicity, Jonathan's career is left in ruins, although he tries to reassure Deirdre. One of the partners brings up the case of Allison Finn while Jonathan was doing his residency, a girl who stalked him and named him in her suicide note. He says that the oral sex idea with Allison was a fantasy, not real. However, he sets out to clear his name and uncovers evidence that not only did Emily fake her suicide attempts, but was involved in a criminal conspiracy with Victoria, all that with an internet research. Sleepwalking was a side effect of the medicine, but Victoria didn't warn Jonathan and he didn't check. After his conversation with Victoria, Jonathan speaks with a parking attendant at the beginning who noticed that Emily was wearing her seatbelt. Emily's boss understood Emily's feelings because she felt the same during a hard time in her life and mentions William Cyron's Darkness Visible book. The boss mentions a poisonous fog taken from the book, which reminds Jonathan of something which Emily said. Jonathan interviews Emily at the mental hospital. She looks better. Emily tells Jonathan that Julia was somebody she used to work with at the bar, but from whom she hadn't heard from the day of the killing. Jonathan tells Deirdre his suspicions of a conspiracy to make rival companies go up in the stock market. Deirdre tells him to quit the case. After being administered what Jonathan claims is a truth serum, Emily behaves as if she's groggy from the drug, mentioning Madeleine, the miscarriage she had, which, unbeknownst to her, is actually placebo, salt water. This confirms Jonathan's suspicions, but the district attorney cannot do anything about it. When Jonathan confronts Victoria with his findings and the fact that Victoria visited Emily at the mental hospital, she emails photographs to Jonathan's wife, implying he had an affair with Emily. Jonathan's wife and stepson leave him. Jonathan managed to turn Emily and Victoria against each other by using legal means to prevent contact between them and making each believe that her partner has sold her out to Jonathan for a better deal. One day, Emily wants to phone her lawyer, but another patient is on the phone, mumbling and taking forever to finish. Emily insists on the ward's island desk nurse, who tells her that Dr. Banks has forbidden her to use the phone anyway. A man takes Emily away by sheer force. Another nurse injects something in her arm to calm her down. Later, Emily reveals the workings of the plot to Jonathan. She enjoyed the rich life and hated Martin for causing her to lose it. She specifically went to Victoria for counseling, as she too had been abandoned by her husband, and the two began a romantic and sexual relationship. They taught each other about the workings of the financial world and faking psychiatric disorders. They then went to elaborate means to fake the side effects of Bablixa to manipulate the stock prices of the drug's manufacturer and its competitor, allowing the duo to become rich in the process. Jonathan asks the judge to release Emily while Victoria is present. Victoria has returned back to her office and her previous work. Emily appears at Victoria's practice and they kiss each other passionately. Emily is wired and the police take Victoria away. In the next scene, Emily makes her obligatory visit to Dr. Banks, who proceeds to prescribe her more drugs against her wishes. As she storms out of his office, she sees her lawyer with Martin's mother, who slaps her because she's learned that her son's murder was intentional. Emily leaves the building and the police officers chase her down and take her into custody and send her back to the mental ward. In the final scene, Jonathan has regained his normal life with his wife and son. Meanwhile, Emily sits in the ward, staring blankly out the window. A psychiatric nurse asks Emily how she's feeling, and she responds by saying apathetically, "Better, much better." And here the movie ends. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to hit the bell icon to stay up to date with such interesting movie recap videos.